Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It is Friday. It is 3:58 a.m. East Coast time. Yes, it is bright and early today. We have to get a lot done this Friday. In terms of what's getting done this Friday, a lot of it's going to be Patreon related. I'm doing an ownership video, an ownership and leverage video for Patreon people only. You can get that linked up down below. As well as WNBA and MLB is still going on for Patreon. But as well as for right now, for YouTube, for everybody here, this free content, it's going to be my final thoughts on the week. And I'm going to be live tomorrow on Awesomo's channel with Chris Randone at 11 a.m. So there'll be some more final thoughts talk there. But I usually don't start making any of my lineups until like later today. My cash lineup usually gets solidified like Saturday afternoon or somewhere in there. And then I don't tinker my cash lineup. So in terms of all that, yes, there's going to be more final thoughts, I guess you can say, because we're still waiting to hear some news on specific players. Other things will come out over the next day or two, but I'm going to break it down position by position where my final thoughts reside. Before we get into it, thank you for being here. We just crossed 7,300 subscribers, so I appreciate you all so much. This is fantastic. Thank you. If you are interested, down below, I do have a Patreon with exclusive content, loads of stuff, loads of value going into the Patreon for the NFL tiers for WNBA and MLB. Definitely NFL. I'm ramping that up a ton. Free show, free podcast, or an extra show, an extra podcast in there, an extra live stream, as well as my rankings, my game-by-game notes. Lots of stuff. There's about 10 things that go into that. So it's all linked down below. Have an NFL Daily Fantasy course linked down below. And yeah, thank you. I just appreciate everybody for being here. If you are new here and you get any value at all, please hit that subscribe button. My name is Sal Vetri, and I appreciate you being here on this channel. So let's get into it. This is just a target offense sheet. Some totals have changed, but we'll go position by position, starting with the quarterback position, and I'll make it a little bit bigger. The key stats, you can get all these key stats in the statistics dashboard. That is also another perk of Patreon. Every single position's key stats, target offense sheet, downloadable sheets. So my interest today at the QB position. So this is final thoughts, but let's just put an asterisk by it because probably by the time I don't enter 150 max, at least not yet. By the time I'm doing some 20 max tournaments, 3 max single entry, I'm going to have a player pool on Patreon that is going to be a little bit more filtered down than this. I'm not going into a player pool with 9 quarterbacks, right? I'll probably have like 6 or 7 quarterbacks with some of them having very low exposure. But Jared Goff, how do you not like this guy? He's going to be playing in, if not the fastest paced game of the week, the second. And these are not my rankings. These are just if I like a guy or if he's someone interesting or if I don't have interest as of right now. Like Jared Goff does not mean he's my number one quarterback. He's not right now in terms of exposure. But he's just getting slept on. 25.75 team implied total. That's top 6 on the slate. The defense last year in Carolina was average to below average at defending the quarterback position in terms of fantasy points allowed. And this game is going to be, if not the fastest, the second fastest paced game on the slate. We know the Rams like to play fast. Carolina started to play fast last season. And I imagine now they don't have no Cameron Sardin and Payne. You don't have no slower backs in the backfield in terms of Christian McCaffrey going to get a lot of the work, but then they're going to kind of give a little bit work away to Jordan Scarlett, I imagine more so around the goal line. This pace is going to stay high, if not higher, for Carolina with more quick plays in the offense too. Guys like Greg Olsen being back, Curtis Samuel taking another leap forward, if not the biggest leap out of everybody on that offense forward, and still having McCaffrey back there. So huge in terms of pace, but Jared Goff is just getting slept on. Why is he getting slept on? Because you haven't heard anything about him. The only thing you heard about him was his contract extension that just happened recently. None of the starters played in the preseason. That was by design. You shouldn't be playing your starters in the preseason. So none of the starters played in the preseason, and the last time you saw them, they looked terrible against the Patriots last year in the Super Bowl. So everything about the Rams right now is just negative in people's minds. The Super Bowl performance, nobody knows what they're doing because of the preseason, Todd Gurley's knee. You don't have any good news coming out, but for the most part, this is the same exact offense, the Sean McVay offense that everybody's hyped about, and they're not getting any attention, at least in terms of ownership, across the board for most of these guys, just due to the fact that it's a spot where people are sleeping on it overall. This guy was tops in the league in terms of top 5 in D yards, defensive or yards above replacement as a quarterback. Yards per game was up. Everything in terms of key stats that you want to be looking at. Red zone attempts was, I believe, the highest in the league, only behind Jameis Winston and Patty Mahomes, or only behind, I believe it was Patty Mahomes. 103 for Patty Mahomes, 101 for Goff. So right there, Jared Goff is being slept on. Lamar Jackson at $6,000 flat is way too cheap. Look, Miami's run defense is terrible. Their rush defense, just due to the fact that Baltimore's offensive line isn't fantastic, is going to get to Lamar. But at the same time, their pressure rate was terrible last year, and they didn't do much to change that. So he should have a decent amount of time, even behind a pretty not great offensive line. And this is a guy who's going to run the ball. Now, they already came out and said, oh, we're going to run less, we're going to throw more. Well, that makes sense. You're not going to run the 14, 15 times a game like you were last year when you have a whole off season to implement an offense. Miami last year against the quarterback was pretty poor. This is a slow-paced game, but last year in terms of pace, Lamar Jackson and this team ran 70 plays per game, and a lot of that jumped once Lamar Jackson came in towards the second half of the year. If you get a whole season out of Lamar Jackson, this team's probably going to lead the league in terms of pace, plays per game, just because they're so efficient and effective at running the ball. When you have now Mark Ingram, you have the rookie in Justice Hill, you still have Gus Edwards, and you have Lamar, literally like a four-headed backfield there. This is why I'm not as high on Mark Ingram. You're going to be able to run a ton of plays as long as you can chunk out those 3 or 4 yard gains and just keep picking up first downs and running a lot of plays on your drives because you're not having 30-yard chunks in the air or something like that. So, I like Lamar Jackson at 6,000 because of the rushing upside. He's way too cheap. This is a guy who, in my opinion, should be priced somewhere around 6,400, 6,500 just due to his rushing upside alone on DraftKings. Like, the guy's floor on the running game against Miami is realistically like 5 to 6 fantasy points, and if he gets in the end zone, clearly I'm not going to say his floor is a rushing touchdown, but like 50 yards is probably his floor against Miami. Dak Prescott, I love. My interest in Dak just completely rose the past day when Zeke signed, and then when they said that Amari Cooper was going to be a full go. I am not buying the 20 to 25 reps for Ezekiel Elliott. If you are buying that, please explain to me why you were buying that, and we'll talk about this about Zeke, but I'll get into it now. If the guy is coming back, he's been fully healthy, working out every single day in Cabo with Hall of Fame running backs. He's had the playbook. He's had the updated playbook for the Cowboys, and he's been running their 2-minute offense. He's been communicating with the team through third parties, and he knows the drill. Like, he was here on Wednesday. He's been practicing. They're going to say this because they want to just make sure that he's healthy. If he goes into this game and feels fine, which I fully expect him to because he's been practicing and he's being healthy, if he feels fine, he's going to run more than just 20 to 25 reps. Those 20 to 25 reps, if it actually means snaps, means he's going to play less than a half of football in this game. That's not happening. You don't sign this man and then have your week 1 against your rival to not play the guy you just signed for the highest running back, the richest running back in NFL history, whatever they want to call it. But yeah, Ezekiel Elliott, if he's getting 20 to 25 reps, I likely mean that means touches over snaps, even though RotoWorld says it's not. I don't expect him to only be limited to that. I expect Zeke to be a full go. That's the way I'm building my lineups. You're getting low ownership on him because of that. But yeah, Dak Prescott is going to be fully loaded with his weapons. Jason Witten is now back. Michael Gallup takes another step forward. I love Dak Prescott in stacks of the Dallas Cowboys as a hammer game at the 425 spot. All right, before we quickly get into this video, I just want to stop by and let you know about Fantasy Draft. It's linked up above, or the picture is above with the link down below. Fantasy Draft is probably running what is my favorite tournament right now for week 1. Fantasy Draft, if you don't know, they're doing rake-free contests and rake-free DFS in general. The only site to do fully rake-free contests. And what rake is in terms of a management fee. It's taking money off of the top. Like if you go to a stock market and you put money in and you use a management investor or a financial investor, they're going to take money off the top. Well, that's what DraftKings and FanDuel does, and they're doing it at a 30% rate clip. You put $100 in, on average, you're losing about $30 to the rake in tournaments and even head-to-heads from DraftKings, from FanDuel. Now you're losing 0%. You're losing 0%. I guess it comes out to like 1 to 2% if you pay their monthly fee on Fantasy Draft, which is clearly better. You should be getting into their Hooters Week 1 tournament. It's a milli tournament. It is fantastic, the structure of it. It is not all the money goes to only first place or the top 10. No, it's structured fantastic. I recommend it, highly recommend it. I'm already in it. I think you should get over there as well. Fantasy Draft is rake-free. The benefits are immense. Like I just said, you're losing almost a third of your bankroll every single time you play on DraftKings. Now, obviously, there's benefits to playing on DraftKings, just more money you can get down, bigger tournaments. But for the most part, DraftKings is just really good at marketing. They're really good at marketing. They were a couple of years ago throwing commercials on nonstop. If you were putting all of your money into DraftKings, you're losing 30% more than you would be on sites like Fantasy Draft this week. So make sure to check out Fantasy Draft. The link is down below. If you click that link, it will help me. I don't make any money off of you. They just track it to see if I'm actually bringing them people. So you can click it if you want. I think it's a very good contest. That is the picture of the logo up above. Let's get back to this video. Carson Wentz against Washington. This total is fantastic. It's now tied for the highest on the slate at 27.75. Washington, the secondary is okay, right? They get Landon Collins. You still have Josh Norman, who, if anything, is becoming closer to an average cornerback in this league, to be completely honest with you. Josh Norman does not shadow, so Wentz, the weapons are there, right? 12 personnel is going to be ran a lot. What does that mean? Well, that means you're going to have 2 tight ends on the field. You're going to have Dallas Goedert, you're going to have Zach Ertz. Landon Collins is actually very good against Zach Ertz in his career. When Landon Collins was with the Giants, he was able to limit Ertz, but he can only limit the guy so much when he's going to be targeted 9 to 10 times a game and probably have 2 to 3 red zone targets in the game. So, yeah, $5,700 is way too cheap for this guy. Highest total on the slate now. His price is just absolutely broken below $6,000. It is ridiculous for Carson Wentz and a couple other players. I'm going to have a lot of interest. You have so many weapons out there, right? We talked about Ertz and Goddard. You have Deshaun Jackson. You have Alshon Jeffrey. You have Nelson Aguilar, who Wentz has really never had a connection with in the slot. That was mainly Nick Foles. And then you also have the backfield. You have Miles Sanders, the rookie. You have Jordan Howard, Darren Sproles to an extent. So there's so many weapons here. The only issue for me is, where do you go? What weapons do you lean on? I think if you're playing tournaments, and I did the show yesterday with Lofty on the Awesemo channel, he just said if you're playing tournaments, you get to just a lot of everything. You get to exposure of Deshaun Jackson, you get to exposure of Miles Sanders even, and Alshon and Zach Ertz, and that makes sense to me. If you're only playing like 3 maxes or single entry, I think you get to Zach Ertz, even though Collins does limit him, but it's not like he's going to be mainly on him as a safety, right? Especially in short intermediate routes. Collins won't be there as much as the deep routes. So I think you get to Zach Ertz, and then I would probably choose after that, if you're playing big GPPs, I would probably choose Deshaun Jackson. I'm not worried about the finger injury. They've been waiting for a burner. There's connection already. Alshon Jeffrey is fine. He's okay. He'll probably see the most of Josh Norman. And he also only 200-yard games and 34 starts out there. I'm not saying that means that he's not a good play. Like, he can have 80 yards and a touchdown, and it's fine. But I'm just saying that the upside for Alshon, another year removed, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, the rookie who's going to be the wide receiver number 4 out there, is going to push him a little bit for reps and snaps on the outside, while Deshaun Jackson is just a totally different player, and he's going to stay on the field a lot more probably than Alshon. Nick Foles at 5,300, I have a ton of interest. This is my favorite game to stack on the slate, the Kansas City-Jacksonville game. I love it. I like pieces of Jacksonville to stack with it. You can stack Dede and Leonard Fournette. That's probably the most obvious stack. I think Chris Conley is also a fine stack. $5,300 is very sneaky for a guy who's going up against the Chiefs, who are bottom 5 in terms of how many fantasy points they allowed to the quarterback last year, meaning a favorable spot for Nick Foles. It's a 24.75 team implied total for the Jaguars. That's crazy. That's a very good total. They're only like 4-point underdogs against the Chiefs. This game has shootout written all over it. The offense is going to be in 11 personnel a ton. You're going to have Chris Conley and DJ Shark on the outside if Marquise Lee is limited, which I expect. And then you're going to have Dede in the slot with Leonard Fournette behind in the backfield. And that's a pretty good setup, to be honest with you, against a weaker Kansas City defense. So Nick Foles at 5,300. I think he's actually fine for cash too. Now he's probably not even like a top 3 cash quarterback option for me as of right now. He probably doesn't make my cash tournament or my cash lineups, but if you get to him in cash, I don't think that that's a bad move at all. Patrick Mahomes and Jameis Winston, these are 2 of the most expensive, I believe, quarterbacks on the slate. I like them both. Look, they're both fine for cash. Jameis is going to be playing in probably, if not similar to the Rams in Carolina, if not the fastest, well then this would be the second fastest paced game on the slate against the San Francisco defense that was bottom 5 in DVOA last year. You can get any pieces you want here to stack with. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, O.J. Howard, all of them make sense. Even Brahman Perriman, I don't remember his first name, but Perriman on the outside is going to be on the field for a decent amount of snaps as sort of the burner on the outside. Evans is a big-bodied receiver who can catch just any jump ball. Chris Godwin in the slot will be taking over the Bruce Arians role in this Tampa Bay offense, or he would be taking over the Larry Fitzgerald role that Bruce Arians had in Arizona in this Tampa Bay offense. He seems to be set to do big things. Lots of interest in Jameis Winston. I'm just personally not going to be paying up most likely for quarterbacks in tournaments. In cash, you can pay up because it's so easy to. So Patrick Mahomes, 7,200, I'm fine getting there. Like I said, this is my favorite game to stack. I'm fine getting to it in cash. I'm fine getting to it in tournaments. The only issue with tournaments is I really only like Travis Kelce to pair him with. Maybe Sammy Watkins to a lesser extent. Last year, Tyreek Hill got locked down by Jalen Ramsey. And it wasn't just Jalen Ramsey. It was Jalen Ramsey with safety help, with a third safety help. There was like triple coverage a lot on Tyreek Hill for about a third of that game. They would run a 2-man if they did. The safety on the left side of the field would stay with Hill, and then the safety on the right side would shift over to the middle of the field to help with anything that potentially Hill was burning deep. But yeah, Patrick Mahomes individually for cash makes a lot of sense. For tournaments, I think Kelce is the main stack option there, and then you can get to Sammy Watkins, in my opinion. After that, we'll have a very good Sammy Watkins will have the better matchup because he'll be man-to-man, one-on-one a lot more by far than Tyreek Hill will get. Cam Newton is questionable to me in terms of just being an interest or not. I probably don't get there. The game environment's very good, but Cam Newton has lost all of his rushing upside. They said he's going to be a pocket passer due to the recent shoulder injury, the ankle injury that happened like 2 weeks ago. So there's not much there. I'd rather get to cheaper quarterbacks and GPPs that have more upside. Jimmy Garoppolo is a guy who I think he's a GPP stack option only. I wouldn't get to him in cash, but this in-game environment is fantastic. They have a good total at 25.75. They have a good matchup against the Rams, who on this slate gave up the second most fantasy points to the quarterback, only outside of the Atlanta Falcons last year. Jimmy G at $5,800 is probably too cheap. The main stack option, though, is Kittle. After that, where are you going with stacks? It's probably you're taking a flyer on either Dante Pettis, Marquise Goodwin, whoever it might be after that. Deebo Samuel, the rookie, I think has upside, but do you want to play a rookie in week 1? It's the time to buy on one. If you do, nobody will probably be on him. But yeah, so my main interests right now are Jared Goff, Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, Carson Wentz, Nick Foles, and probably Patrick Mahomes. I'm probably going to put Jameis. We'll leave Jameis in there as a yes for now. The thing that I want to get down to in tournaments is like 5 to 6 quarterbacks at most. So this pool of 7 yeses, one of them is going to have to get scratched, and it's probably going to be either Jared Goff or Jameis Winston, just due to the fact that somebody has to go, or I'll just keep them in and have one lineup. So that's where I'm at right now with those guys. In terms of Kirk Cousins, I know a lot of people are going to ask. I don't have much interest. I'm pretty bullish. Once John DeFilippo got fired last year, Kirk Cousins only averaged 28 pass attempts per game over the last 4 of the season, 27 over the last 3. So the pass attempts started to come down. As Dalvin Cook came back, they wanted to run the ball more and more. It directly correlated with that. Now they bring an offensive coordinator who wants to run the ball as well. I think they're going to run the ball a lot more. I think that Kirk Cousins does not average somewhere in the 40s in pass attempts, but really, honestly, in the low 30s, which is going to hurt, obviously, his overall upside. It's going to hurt the upside of Diggs and Thielen. Thielen is not going to be in the slot anymore, which makes him less efficient because they have Chad Beebe there now, or Beatty there. And then you have Stephon Diggs, who even if he plays questionable with a hamstring, is one of the worst players in terms of playing through injuries that we've seen in fantasy over the last 2 years. So I don't really have much interest there. Jacoby Brissett, I don't have interest against the stacked Chargers defensive unit, both with linebackers and secondary options. So in terms of getting through the running backs, it's very short. The interest for me is short. I'll add in a couple of guys who I'll get some exposure to and not be as aggressive on, but Zeke and Saquon, they're the top end guys that I like. I'm not buying, like I said, the 20 to 25 reps that they're saying Zeke is going to get. That's not happening. If he goes out there and he looks fine, they're not taking him off the field. If he says, no, I feel good, I've been working out every single day in Cabo in much better weather with Hall of Fame running backs, I know this playbook, I was here Wednesday to kind of get every other detail that I need, I feel good. That is exactly the situation that's happening. Yes, Zeke knew the playbook. They were giving him a 2-minute offense through third parties, talking to his Hall of Fame running backs, Emmitt Smith, and whoever else was out there with him. Marshall Faulk, I think, went out there. And then he had former coaches from Dallas going out there and helping him. This man was not just sipping on pina coladas in Cabo. He was actually working out. So the 20 to 25 reps is probably something that some beat writer heard, wrote about it, and now it's becoming a story. But for the most part, they're going to go out there and say, okay, let's see how you feel on your first 20 to 25 reps. And then if you feel good, well, just keep playing, because why would we take you out after we just paid you? Saquon Barkley, he's game flow independent. He's a huge underdog here, like 7 points underdogs. It's a decent matchup against Dallas overall for a running back in terms of middle of the road, but they gave up the 5th least catches to the running backs last year, which is where Saquon excels. I'm a little bit worried, as long as Eli's at the helm, that this offense is going to be still one-dimensional. Short passes to Saquon and little short passes in the middle of the field to Shepard when he's in the slot, and Evan Ingram, which is worrisome for the overall upside in terms of touchdown equity in the red zone for Saquon Barkley. But yeah, Saquon at $9,000, Zeke at $9,200. They're my favorite top-end running backs for obvious reasons. Saquon is still going to be the number 1 wide receiver in this offense as a running back. I think Evan Ingram is a close number 2, and then Sterling Shepard is a sneaky number 3. I really like stacking that game actually with Dallas and bringing it back with either Ingram, Shepard, or Saquon. Todd Gurley, $7,900. He's criminally too cheap. Why are you guys not playing him? I get it. The price range is where you can either pay up for the expensive guys, or why not just go down to all the 6 and 5K running backs that have a lot of value on this slate. Todd Gurley, $7,900. Sean McVay, as of yesterday, said no. There's no snap count. There's no play count for Todd Gurley. He's going to get 85 plus % of the workload, which is his normal workload. And he's going in week 1 in the second best overall pace, if not the best, on the entire slate against a Carolina defense that was good last year, sure, against the running backs in terms of limiting points. But Todd Gurley is an elite talent. He's going to catch the ball. He's going to be in the red zone a ton. His touchdown upside is probably higher than anybody on the slate outside of maybe Zeke. You know why you're staying away from him? Because you're concerned about his knee. Yeah, that makes sense if you own him in season long. If you own him in week 1 of DFS, this should be the time that you're firing shots at him while his knee is fully healthy, or as healthy as it's going to be, and there's no concerns, and the coach is saying he's going to get all the work out there. Now I get it, you're worried because he didn't get any of the work in the Super Bowl and yada, 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 but everything that's pointing to us is telling us Todd Gurley is going to be criminally too low, like under 10% ownership probably. His price point is way too low. If there was no concerns about Todd Gurley's knee, he'd be $9,000. And everybody would be playing him. So I'm not concerned about the knee for week 1. It's going to be as healthy as it is. He's as fresh as it gets, and he's in a fantastic spot as probably a top 2 running back in this, or top 3 running back in the entire league, and he's priced as if he's like the 5th or 6th or 7th best option. So I like Todd Gurley, not in cash really, but I think it's fine in cash, but not in cash. But in GPPs, he's going to be criminally too low owned. People are fearing a knee injury that has no real impact for DFS. If he gets hurt this week with his knee and you lose some money in a GPP tournament, so be it. But I think that the risk of that happening is much lower than the ownership is indicating. Leonard Fournette, $6,100. So Todd Gurley is my favorite GPP play. Leonard Fournette might be my favorite overall play. There's nobody in this backfield to take snaps from him. Raquel Armstead, the rookie that they signed, an undrafted free agent, and Devin Ezigbo from the Saints who got cut. That's all that's behind him, and a fullback. So he's going to get the 3-down work. He's going to get the pass catching work. He's in a fantastic spot. The Chiefs gave up the 3rd most points to the running back position last year. I don't expect much of that to change this year. Alfred Blue landed on IR, so there's just absolutely nobody to take touches away from Fournette. Then you factor in that TJ Yeldon, who's caught 85 passes the last 2 years, is now out into Buffalo. Leonard Fournette is going to be the pass-catching running back. Armstead never caught passes in college. Devin Ezigbo is an okay pass catcher, but they're not bringing him into the games as an undrafted free agent to just start spelling Leonard Fournette. Fournette took himself to a deserted island for a month to train. This man is absolutely scary. I love him. This week, he's not coming off the field. I have him projected for 22 carries and 5 targets, which somewhere around 25 touches overall. Lots of touchdown upside as a 3-down goal line back. Dalvin Cook against Minnesota, he's going to be the highest home player on the slate for good reason. Everybody saw him have an 85-yard touchdown. They think that that's going to happen every time he touches the ball. They think that Atlanta is the worst defense against the run, which they're not. Last year, they were 4th worst, and as they got healthier and healthier, they became better and better. I think this team is going to be much improved on defense, not anywhere near how bad they were last year, but they're still not going to be a top 5, top 10 defense. They might get closer to average, and that'll be throughout the course of the year, right? It's not going to be week 1. So Dalvin Cook makes for an obvious play at $6,000. I much prefer Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette is by far the better play, but everybody's going to jump on Dalvin Cook because, Atlanta against the pass-catching running back, and he had an 85-yard touchdown week 1. I'm not saying he's a bad play. He's a fantastic cash play. He's a fine tournament play. Here's the deal. You don't have to get away from him because he's going to be 30% owned, or on all the sites, the 3 sites that I use for ownership, the aggregate that he's coming in at right now is around 27.5% ownership, the highest on the slate. That's fine. You can play that because he's a cheap running back and a good matchup who's going to get volume, who also catches the ball, and he's going to get also just overall snaps are going to be very high. So what you're paying for there is it makes sense to eat chalk. You don't want to eat chalk on a wide receiver who seems to be in a better spot but has not proven that and is only going to get 4 targets. No, this guy in Dalvin Cook, if all goes as planned, he's in a spot where Atlanta gave up the 4th most points to the running back last year, although I think that's due to regress positively for Atlanta. And he has a 26 implied team total, and he's in an offense that wants to run the ball. Like I said, Kirk Cousins' pass attempts, once John DeFilippo, whatever, he got fired last year. They went down by 13 pass attempts per game. It was a small 4-game sample, but still they went down by 13 per game, and they started to run the ball a lot more at Dalvin Cook. Alexander Mattison is a worry out there. They said he might take on the Latavius Murray role, the rookie running back. So if that's the case, the upside in Dalvin Cook hits the floor a lot more. He doesn't make him a bad play, but people who are owning him at 30% clips and higher, you have to kind of take into account that what if Latavius Murray's role is kind of assumed by Alexander Mattison as the pace and change back. So right now I like Dalvin Cook. I think he's fine. I much prefer 2 to 3 other running backs on this slate right now. I'm going to have Dalvin Cook in tournaments. I'm going to have him maybe in cash. I'm not positive yet, but he's going to be highly owned, but it's not a spot that I would get away from it. I just think that there's at least 2 other running backs in better spots, Leonard Fournette being one of them, and the other one being Chris Carson, this guy right here, $5,700. He's cheaper. He's in a top 3 spot on the slate. He is now the 3-down running back with pass-catching responsibilities for a Seattle Seahawks team that already threw the ball last year, 25% of the time to the running backs, and now they're saying they want to throw it even more. Mike Davis is now with the Bears. We saw him actually produce pretty well last night for the Bears against the Packers. Shout out my Packers securing that win. The defense looked elite, but for the most part, it was a really bad Bears offense, a little bit injured of a Bears offense, so we can't really say anything about that yet. But a 27.25 team implied total. They are huge favorites against Cincinnati. Cincinnati gave up the most fantasy points to the running back position last year, 31.7 per game. They have not done much to improve that defense. They have not really done much to improve that offense all that much either. So this team is probably going to be one of the worst in the league. I imagine Carson with pass-catching responsibilities. I have him right now for 23 carries, and I have him for 6 to 7 targets. I'm very bullish on his overall opportunities. But in this game, in the second half, he should be able to just get every single snap. I'm not really concerned about Rashard Penny taking much of the work, or if any at all. It's probably like a 4 to 5 carry thing, which isn't going to impact Carson. I'm starting to come around on Kerryon Johnson at $5,800. This price tier between $5,800 and $6,100 is just so elite from Kerryon, Chris Carson, Dalvin Cook, and Leonard Fournette. It's so elite. Kerryon Johnson is probably the one I have the least interest in out of all 4 of these guys, just due to the fact that his role out of everybody is a little bit shaky. Ty Johnson might come on the field to steal some pass-catching work. You have other running backs in that backfield going to take away some carries, but Detroit's going to run the ball. Matt Patricia made that known that they want to run the ball more, even though this is a fantastic opportunity and matchup for the passing game with Matthew Stafford and Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones Jr., they're still going to run the ball. They want to do that. So you're going to get a fantastic matchup as well for Kerryon Johnson. Maybe he doesn't get as much pass catching upside, which is why I have less interest in him than Carson, Cook, and Fournette, because those guys probably don't come off the field anywhere near as much as Kerryon does. But in this game, I have him for about 18 rushing attempts, and I have him for 3 to 4 targets still, and that's pretty good for your price point of 5,800 against an Arizona defense that is 1 injured, 2 suspended players in Patrick Peterson, and just 3 overall terrible. Yeah, I like Kerryon Johnson a lot in this price range. It's just a matter of there's a lot of other guys as well. Last 2 guys, I have some interest in Nick Chubb. The team total at 25.25 is attractive. The pace is going to be unattractive, probably a bottom 3 pace game on the slate. The overall defense that Tennessee has is going to make it a little bit tougher, but Nick Chubb is going to be a 3-down back with no Kareem Hunt, who also catches the ball. So I'm a little bit worried there. That's why he's only a question mark for me, and I like all those other guys, those 4 I just listed, who are cheaper than him, more than Nick Chubb, but he will be a 3-down back with pass catching and goal line responsibilities. Christian McCaffrey, 8,800. I have interest, of course. He's Christian McCaffrey. He'll still be on the field a ton, but he's probably going to come off the field around the red zone and mainly around the goal line a lot more. They already said that. Jordan Scarlett is probably going to assume some of the red zone opportunities. I still want to see it to believe it, but I do prefer Saquon and Ezekiel Elliott on the more expensive end, and I much prefer Todd Gurley for only $900 less. Only, you get a discount here. Like I'm saying only like he's more money, but Todd Gurley for $900 less, who's going to be criminally lower owned, who's going to be in the opposite end of this game and garner no ownership. Right now, I have Austin Eckler as a no. He'll probably become an somewhat interesting, but Austin Eckler is generating the top 3 ownership on the slate. Why are you guys owning him? I don't get it. He's $5,500. He's not even cheap. Like, I much prefer Carson for $200 more, Kerryon for $300, Dalvin Cook for sure for $500, Leonard Fournette 100 times more than Austin Eckler for $600 more. You know Austin Eckler is only going to get like 60 to 65% of the workload here. Justin Jackson last year when Melvin Gordon was out saw 33% of the carries over those 3 games to Austin Eckler's like 60 to 65. I get it. The matchup is fantastic against Indy. They funnel to the short passes to a running back, but also the Chargers line is terrible. So like the rushing upside here is not great. You're going to be living on a 60 to 65% snap count, and you're paying $5,500 for it. You're not paying $4,000 or a cheap price point like Spencer Ware last year. So I don't have as much interest. I've already been kind of fading Austin Eckler in really all of my tournament. Definitely not playing him in cash. I don't know why you would. And now he's coming in at high ownership. I hope you all continue to play him because the leverage that I'll be getting by not playing him is going to be immense. Justin Jackson is somebody who I also don't have interest in. I have slight interest in Matt Breida for GPPs. I listed him as a no, but he should see 40% of the workload. Don't buy into the Matt Breida as the number 1 on the depth chart. Those depth charts don't mean anything. Tevin Coleman is the number 1. No coaches put together those depth charts. It's the PR department that has no connection to the coaches or the staff or anything like that. So that's my running back final thoughts. And wide receiver is going to be way too long. So if you want my notes on wide receiver, I'm going to quickly go through it. They'll be up on Patreon later today, as well as all these stat sheets, as well as literally everything. A video on ownership and my leverage plays and where I'm getting away from and where I'm going to more often. My ranks are already out for the showdown last night. My ranks and tiers will be out for the Sunday games as of Saturday. Lots going on here. Went live on Wednesday, so check that out. My NFL Daily Fantasy course, how to make more money playing NFL DFS, not just throwing all your money into the Millie Maker and losing it, because that's what's going to happen to you this weekend, more than likely if you keep doing that. Down below that's linked up as well. So, interest. I like the top-end wide receivers. I like Odell. I like Julio. This Odell injury, it's nothing. He's just being a little bit dramatic in terms of can't open up. He's looked fine. Everybody's saying he's looked fine. He said he's been feeling fine other than this injury, so I'm not too concerned. The matchup for him is fantastic against either Adore Jackson or Malcolm Butler, whoever he gets. They both gave up top 10 in terms of passing yards per game last year. This is going to be a fantastic spot overall for Odell Beckham. Julio Jones against Xavier Rhodes. Xavier Rhodes was outside the top 100 in PFF ranking of cornerbacks last year. He's absolute dust. I had a lot of interest in Julio, and I still have some, but then his ownership started to rise, so I thought I was getting a leverage play there, so I might come down from it a little bit. Mike Evans, $7,900 is way too cheap. He's going to be low owned compared to Chris Godwin, compared to O.J. Howard on his own team. I think you get natural leverage by pivoting for Mike Evans at a more expensive price tag. The guy was like top 5 in receiving last year. He's still Jameis's favorite target, and now he's going up against a bottom 5 pass DVOA. Keenan Allen is probably my favorite play for GPPs. He's a fine tournament play. Keenan Allen, I made a whole video on. He's that one dude was the video, pretty much the theme of it. He's going to be going up against the Colts, who funnel to the middle of the field to short intermediate routes for tight ends, running backs, and slot receivers. Keenan Allen, already an elite slot receiver, is going to get even more work in the slot with Tyrell Williams, who ran about 35% of his routes plus out of the slot. last year, now in Oakland. And yeah, Keenan Allen is now going to assume more work there. A bad Chargers offensive line means Philip Rivers has to get the ball out quick. Where is he going to look quickly? Either to a check down to Justin Jackson or Ekeler, probably to either Hunter Henry, but mainly for the most part to his favorite receiver in Keenan Allen, an elite talent in the slot that will have the best matchup when he's in the slot relative to being outside. And overall, wide receivers, when they're playing in the slot, if you don't already know this, is a fantastic spot because they could use the whole field instead of having to just use one little side of the field and really just pretty much doing a go route or having a deep seam where you don't then have as much upside as you do in the middle of the field to really be deceptive. Stefon Diggs, I'm going to put as a no. I didn't update this as of the news coming out, but Stefon Diggs is a no. Even if he plays in this game, whenever he's been playing limited, he just does not play well. So I'm not going there. Chris Godwin, there's no way you fade Chris Godwin this week. Like I said, he's taking on the Larry Fitzgerald role in this Bruce Arians offense. Arians said he's not coming off the field. He did not come off the field in the preseason. He played on like all 55+% of the snaps that Jameis was out there for. Played in the slot on all the 11 personnel snaps. He's going to be an absolute monster. He was a red zone monster last year in terms of his targets per game and his efficiency in the red zone. Now he's going to get more and more opportunities and just not come off the field because there's no Adam Humphries to take over slot responsibilities. There's no Deshaun Jackson to kind of push Chris Godwin off the field in certain situations. Yeah, Chris Godwin is not somebody you fade. He's an absolute monster in every single format. Tyler Lockett against Cincinnati. Tyler Lockett was extremely effective last year. He led the entire league in fantasy points per target at, I believe, 3.13. He was just so good. He had an 81.4% catch rate. He was on the field for about 85% of the snaps. I think that number goes up this year. He'll still be in the slot, but he'll probably move to the outside a little bit more as they re-sign Jerron Brown, who I think goes into the slot a good amount. But this matchup against Cincinnati is so good. The total is fantastic. I like Chris Carson more in this game, but Tyler Lockett's right there for a breakout season and in a very good spot week 1. Tyler Boyd becomes somebody that if he continues to garner ownership, I'm going to get away from. Look, I get it. I like the fact that he's going to be peppered with targets, probably 10 of them. But he has a 17.25 team implied total. They're down by 10, which means I probably have to throw more and probably to him, which is why I actually have interest. But if he garners a ton of ownership, this is going to be a very ugly spot overall for Seattle. And don't you think that they know that Tyler Boyd is really the only thing that can beat them? Sure, Joe Mixon is back there, but Joe Mixon, the offensive line for the Bengals is absolutely atrocious. That's why I don't have interest in Joe Mixon. The offensive line is atrocious, and Giovanni Bernard just signed a very huge and a very significant extension, so now they're incentivized to play Giovanni Bernard more. Don't think they're going to pay the man $6 million more this year out of nowhere, top 15 running back money as a backup, and then not play him. No, he's going to be coming in for probably like an extra 5+ touches a game, which hurts Joe Mixon's upside. So for the most part, Tyler Boyd's the main person that can hurt Seattle, in my opinion. And I think that they know that. I think that Tyler Boyd is not as good as people think he is, especially with no A.J. Green out there. So the implied total I'm worried about. But again, he's not going to be effective, but if he sees efficient, I guess. But if he sees 10 to 12 targets, catches 6 of them for 70 yards, maybe gets in the end zone, that's where you're coming from in terms of he's just going to have so much opportunity, which is why it's hard to kind of get away from him or hard to fully fade. Cooper Kupp, I like Cooper Kupp a lot. I like Cooper Kupp. I like Brandon Cooks the most in this Rams trio, then Cooper Kupp, then Robert Woods last. Cooper Kupp's going to move back into the slot primarily where he gets the best matchup. That's going to force Robert Woods back to the outside where he'll probably face James Bradbury, the best cornerback for Carolina. So Kupp in the slot had a great year last year, was on pace to be the number 1 wide receiver in this offense. So there's nothing wrong with that. In terms of Brandon Cooks, he shreds zone defenses. He's been top 10 like the last 2 or 3 years against his zone defense. I believe he was top 5 last year in yards, and now you're going to get more of his own defense in terms of just deep route running, and I think he has an opportunity to absolutely burn this Carolina defense. D.D. Westbrook against Kansas City, fantastic spot. He's way too cheap. He saw 7 targets in week 3 out of the 10 pass attempts from Foles. I don't think he's going to see 70% of the targets nonstop, but he's in a spot where he can work out of the slot. He was in the slot 90% of the time last year. Foles likes throwing to the slot, i.e. earlier when he kind of made Nelson Aguilar relevant last year a little bit. But overall, DD's in a fantastic spot here. I like this game overall. I don't think that they have anybody to guard DD in the slot. They definitely don't. The matchup against Fuller is an open door. Fuller is terrible compared to Westbrook's pretty elite route running out of the slot, in my opinion. And then that's it, really. I'm not going to keep going over each player. A couple players I'll highlight out here. I'll have notes on Patreon. Albert Wilson against Baltimore. Terrible overall spot. But we said Tyler Lockett was number 1 in fantasy points per target. Albert Wilson was number 2 among qualified receivers with 2.77 last year. He was elite when healthy during 7 games. If you talked about it on the show yesterday with Lofty, he hyped up Albert Wilson a lot as well, but for good reason. It kind of got me thinking and looking more into it. Albert Wilson is the only thing on Miami that I would probably touch. Then kind of it's like the only thing, and then all the way down, if you really force me to say something, it would be Kenyon Drake since they want to feed him more, but there's going to be a Balaj workload share there. So Albert Wilson, really the only thing here. He has a better quarterback. Ryan Fitzpatrick likes throwing to the slot. Look at Adam Humphries last year. Albert Wilson will be in the slot a ton. And overall, Adam Gase likes building or overall, when you have an offense that kind of is stemming from Adam Gase, where he had Jarvis Landry in the slot, it's going to only kind of continue to build and grow from there. So I like Albert Wilson to some extent for GPPs only. Calvin Ridley is going to be criminally too low owned if indeed Julio's ownership stays high. Calvin Ridley it definitely is going to regress this year, but the matchup against Minnesota, it's not the greatest, but his individual matchup will be pretty good against Trey Waynes, who is absolute dust on the outside. So keep an eye on Calvin Ridley. And then, that's it for right now. I'm not going to go through every single player. Some dart throws for GPPs. John Brown with a guy who's a burner with now the quarterback who loves to throw the most in the entire league, in Josh Allen, who had the highest A.dot per target last year. That makes John Brown tournament viable, in my opinion. And then outside of that, Sammy Watkins, Sterling Shepard, there's some tournament options that are interesting. And then on the cheap end, Rashad Higgins and Chris Conley. Rashad Higgins will get a fantastic matchup against Malcolm Butler. Chris Conley would be on the field for a lot of snaps as sort of the third option in an offense, maybe even the second option, because he has a very good connection with Nick Foles so far during camp in a game that should be sort of a shootout. Moving over to tight end. If you're still watching and you have not yet subscribed, if you're on your phone, whatever it might be, if you can hit that red subscribe button, I really appreciate it. If you have to sign into Google to do it, if you could take those extra 2 clicks and 5 seconds to do it, I really, really appreciate it. Helping this channel grow. I'm doing this full time now, so I need all the support that I can get in terms of just reaching new audience members, and you subscribing and hitting the like button allows me to reach more audience members. The like button, not so much, to be honest with you. It doesn't really reach too much, but the subscribe definitely helps. When you get more people watching the videos, it shoots it up the rankings, so I appreciate that. Tight ends. It's very easy here. Travis Kelce and George Kittle. Kelsey's probably going to be twice as owned as Kittle. I don't think it's totally necessary, but I think that I agree with the ownership, honestly, on Kelce. He was fine against Jacksonville last year. Now they got rid of Telvin Smith, and they don't have him, where he just walked away from the team this year. And now nobody's going to be able to guard Kelce. He's the only interest in this passing attack that I have really for the Chiefs overall. The running backs are now messed up. Tyreek's going to have double to triple coverage. Sammy Watkins has some interest, I guess you can say, for me. With Travis Kelce, not much to say. He's elite. George Kittle against Tampa Bay, against a bottom 7 pass DVOA last year in Tampa Bay. Now he finally gets he was breaking records last year with Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard. I get it. He went to college with Beathard. They had a connection, but still. Now he gets Jimmy G, who's by far a better quarterback than both of those players. And if you don't believe that, then I don't know what you've been doing. You just must hate Jimmy G for some reason. $6,600 if everybody's not going to just pay up for him and they're just going to fixate and focus on Travis Kelce, that makes sense. I get it. I agree with Kelce's ownership. I think his ownership's fine, but I think George Kittle's is just criminally low because people are either going down to Ingram, to Hunter Henry, to OJ Howard, or they're going up to Travis Kelce. Speaking of Evan Ingram, he should be the second option. They said that they want to game plan around him this season, especially in week 1 versus Dallas. It's going to be a little bit of a difficult matchup. Some of the linebackers out there for Dallas are very good. Ramsey and all those guys are going to be absolutely fine out there. So, or Smith and Van, whatever his name is, they're going to be good linebackers out there to defend Evan Ingram, but he's going to be peppered with targets. I don't actually have too much interest in Ingram. Out of all these guys that I have yeses on, he's my 5th interest. Hunter Henry is just a cash value. He's probably the number 1 point per dollar guy on the slate for cash reasons. I guess maybe Travis Kelce still is, but I like Hunter Henry a lot for the same reasons I like Keenan Allen. He's going to get peppered with targets. He was an elite. He was like top 5 in all of the elite PFF stats and all the Football Outsiders elite stats and advanced stats when he was healthy. I get it. He's removed now, but apparently he seems as good as new. He's going to be sort of a safety valve with a bad offensive line for Phillip Rivers and a team that funnels to the tight end, running back, and short, intermediate pass catchers. Austin Hooper last year, he was targeted 5.5 times a game, and he caught the ball over 80% of the time. So if you're going to tell me that on average, Austin Hooper is going to catch 4 balls at $3,200, and now he takes another step forward this year, in a place where they're playing in a dome, so that helps Matt Ryan in the offense. I'm going to have interest in Austin Hooper at $3,200. Not a ton, but the fact that on average he was catching 4+ balls a game last year, 4 to 5. I think that's elite. I think for $3,200, if the guy's catching 4 balls for 30 yards, that's fine. I take that. I take the 7 points and I run away with it. That's where I'm at. My other interests are going to be OJ Howard and Delaney Walker. OJ Howard mainly for tournaments. If I'm playing in cash, I'd rather pay up for a tight end or just get down to Hunter Henry, in my opinion, or even Austin Hooper. But in tournaments, he's a fine play in terms of stacking. He makes a lot of sense with Jameis and Godwin or Jameis and Mike Evans. OJ Howard is completely fine there. Delaney Walker at $3,500. He's had like 350 targets, 346 to be exact, over the last 3 fully healthy seasons. He's Marcus Mariota's favorite target still. The only concern is that Adam Humphries is now there in the middle of the field, but I still think he's interesting. I'd much rather pay up for Hunter Henry $400 more or pay down $300 less for Austin Hooper, who I believe are going to have better games and are in much better spots. But that's it. I'm not going over the defense. If you think that there needs to be some advanced analysis behind the defense, you're crazy. The defense is highly variant. The only stats to use are pressure rates and sacks allowed, things like that, because that forces turnovers. But even then, even if you have guys getting a ton of pressure, like last night, the Bears were getting pressure. Guys like Aaron Rodgers aren't going to throw interceptions. So you still, even if you have guys throwing interceptions, one or two, who's telling and who's predicting if that 70-yard interception is returned or not, or if the guy's tackled 20 yards? Because pretty much what you need there is a pick six or a fumble recovery for 6. Just build the rest of your lineup out and then throw a defense in there. I don't care what the defense is. I really don't. I don't care who it is. It could be Jacksonville against the Chiefs. I don't care. It could be anybody. So just build the rest of your lineup out and then fit a defense in that you feel comfortable with. There's no really analysis after that. Look at pressure rates. Look at the defensive front against the offensive line. That's the best things that I can say, just to see what the advantage is there in terms of getting to the quarterback, making him and forcing him to rush and make more mistakes where interceptions and fumbles start to happen, or at least just less points start to happen in stalled drives. So that is it. If you made it through the whole video, let me know down below in the comments that you made it through the whole video. I appreciate you tuning in. This is the final thoughts video for week 1 of the NFL Daily Fantasy Draftkings FanDuel Fantasy Draft season. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. Hit the subscribe button. Follow me on Twitter at SalVetriDFS. You guys rock. You were the best. Thank you so much.
Hey, hold up. 1 second. Check out this page if you haven't yet subscribed. Hit the subscribe button, all right? And if you're interested in Patreon, if you're not already a Patreon, you can hit that button on Patreon, become a Patreon. It will take you right there. You can also check me out on Twitter at SalVetriDFS. And hey, if you're interested, this next video that's about to pop up, why don't you check it out as well. See ya.